Red Bull Racing has once again captured the attention of the Formula One world after expressing deep dissatisfaction with the regulatory changes that will be implemented by the International Automobile Federation, FIA, for the 2025 season. They consider the FIA's decision not to tighten the flexibility test for front and rear wings to be an unfair move that could hurt them in their efforts to maintain their dominance of the championship next season. Will this move affect the competition in Formula One in the 2025 season? Let's take a closer look. The FIA has announced that from the 2025 season onwards, stricter load tests will be applied to the aerodynamic components of racing cars, in particular the front and rear wings. This is to ensure that both parts do not have excessive flexibility that could give certain teams an unfair competitive advantage. This new regulation is a response to an in-depth evaluation carried out by the FIA after the end of the 2024 season, which revealed potential loopholes in the rules that could be exploited by some teams to improve the performance of their cars through more flexible aerodynamic designs. As part of the implementation of this regulation, the FIA will expand the scope of rear wing testing from the Australian Grand Prix scheduled for March 16, 2025. Meanwhile, additional front wing testing will be introduced from the Spanish Grand Prix on June 1, 2025. With this change, the FIA hopes to avoid the controversy that often arises regarding body flexibility, while ensuring that all teams compete on a fair and level playing field, without any exploitation of the technical rules. However, the FIA's decision not to tighten the front wing regulations immediately has drawn mixed reactions, especially from the Red Bull team. They argued that the decision was not in line with their expectations, who wanted a stricter approach to the aerodynamic flexibility regulation. Red Bull even claimed that the changes made by the FIA actually benefited McLaren. This is because McLaren has been developing flexible wing technology since the middle of the 2023 season, so they are believed to have an advantage in adapting to the new rules compared to other teams. This decision also adds to the dynamics of the competition between the teams, with various speculations about its long-term impact on the performance of the top teams. The FIA itself emphasized that this rule change was made purely to maintain fairness and transparency in Formula One, and to ensure that the innovations made by the teams remain within the limits set by the technical regulations. The Red Bull team felt betrayed after receiving assurances from the FIA that there would be no significant changes to the aerodynamic testing of the front wing. They had relied on this certainty in the design and development of their car. However, the recent decision by the FIA, which contradicted the direction given in the second half of last season, left Red Bull feeling disadvantaged. Christian Horner, as Red Bull team principal, openly expressed his disappointment with this policy. According to him, the rule change not only disrupted the team's strategy, but also reduced the effectiveness of the efforts they had put into developing the RB21 car. All the research and development that had been carefully carried out now seemed to have been wasted, as it had to be adapted to the new regulations that had suddenly been imposed. This uncertainty forced Red Bull back to the design table to find alternative solutions that could be applied to the front wing design. The challenge was compounded by the fact that they were committed to the RB21 aerodynamic concept that they had developed over the past few months. Changing the design in a limited time frame is certainly not easy, especially with the competition schedule approaching. As a result, the team is now faced with a major dilemma: maintain the original concept with minimal adjustments, or make significant changes that risk compromising the overall performance of the car. With the introduction of these rule changes, Red Bull are concerned that the RB21 car they have prepared for this season may not be as competitive as they had hoped. This rule change has the potential to hamper the team's performance if they cannot adapt quickly. Meanwhile, McLaren, who have already been using the flexible wing design concept since 2023, are expected to reap huge benefits from this new regulation. The Woking-based team has seen a significant increase in performance since the middle of the 2024 season, allowing them to get closer to the competitive level of Red Bull and Ferrari in the fight for the top position in the championship. If Red Bull does not find an effective solution in the short term, they risk losing the dominance they have built up in Formula One in recent years. This is certainly a big challenge for Max Verstappen, who has relied heavily on consistent and optimal car development to stay on track for the world title. If not handled properly, this change could have an impact on his chances of maintaining his glory at the top of the standings and adding to his title collection in the future. McLaren has responded positively to the steps taken by the FIA. Andrea Stella, as McLaren team principal, emphasized that since the middle of last season, they have been focusing on developing innovations that will have a significant impact on the performance of their cars. With this new policy, Stella is optimistic that their approach will produce benefits that can be used to increase the team's competitiveness. Furthermore, he added that McLaren's main goal is to appear dominant in every race, hoping to minimize the chances of other teams competing with them in the hunt for the championship title. Ferrari, on the other hand, feels disadvantaged by the FIA's decision. The Italian team has invested a lot of time, energy, and resources into developing more flexible front wing technology. However, in the absence of new, stricter regulations in this area, their efforts are in danger of being wasted. Ferrari, which began to see significant improvements in performance at the end of the 2024 season, is now concerned that the FIA's decision could limit its ability to develop a car for the 2025 season. This could hamper the team's efforts to remain at the forefront and present a car capable of challenging the dominance of its rivals. The flexibility of car wings has been a hotly debated topic in Formula One for years. In 2024, McLaren were asked to modify their rear wing after lengthy discussions with the FIA. Meanwhile, Red Bull were accused of illegally changing the height of their car between qualifying and the race, although the team strongly denied the allegations and claimed they had not broken any existing rules. The ongoing tension between the FIA and Formula One teams highlights the fact that the sport's technical regulations are often a battleground for intense off-track politics. Many teams feel that the FIA's decisions tend to favor certain parties and are not always neutral. Some observers have even argued that the FIA has sometimes shown a tendency to make decisions that could affect the balance of power on the grid, with the aim of creating tighter competition or for certain interests that may exist behind the scenes. Max Verstappen, who is now the main driver for the Red Bull team, has been vocal about the development of the team's car and their ambitions to win the world title. He stated that it would be very difficult to compete for a fifth title if the development of the car continued in the same way as it did at the end of last season. His father, Jos Verstappen, also added that if Red Bull fails to deliver a competitive car in the future, it is likely that Verstappen will consider moving to another team, and that cannot be ignored. These statements will certainly put additional pressure on Red Bull. Not only do they have to deal with the challenge of a rule change that could hurt them, but they also have to make sure they can keep Verstappen on board. If Red Bull cannot meet Verstappen's expectations with a more competitive car, it is inevitable that the driver will consider other options, including the possibility of joining other big teams such as Ferrari or Mercedes. With the upcoming rule changes, the 2025 season is predicted to be one of the most competitive in F1 history. However, with the FIA's recent decision regarding flexible wing testing, it is possible that teams that have invested heavily in certain developments may not see the benefits they expected. Red Bull, in particular, faces a huge challenge to ensure its car remains competitive in the midst of these regulatory changes. With uncertainty within the team and threats from McLaren and Ferrari, they will need to find innovative solutions to stay on top. If Red Bull cannot overcome these challenges, not only will their dominance be over, but the team's future as a major contender in Formula One could be in jeopardy. F1 fans and analysts are now waiting to see Red Bull's next strategic move, whether they will be able to rise or suffer a setback like what happened to previous dominant teams. Will Red Bull be able to overcome this challenge and remain at the forefront of F1? Or will we see a new dominance by McLaren or Ferrari? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section.